أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. والحمد لله والصلاة والسلام على ما لا نبي بعد سيدنا ونبينا وحبيبنا ومولانا محمد صلى الله تعالى عليه وسلم وعلى آله وصحبه ومن اهتدى بهداه إلى يوم الدين. فإن خير الحديث كتاب الله وخير الهدي هدي محمد صلى الله تعالى عليه وسلم وشر الأمور محدثاتها وكل محدثة بدعة وكل بدعة ضلالة وكل ضلالة في النار. Amma ba'd. My dear brothers and sisters in Islam, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi ta'ala wa barakatuh. Welcome to the House of Dua and welcome to our conversation on the issue of leadership. My dear brothers and sisters in Islam, before we begin, I'd like to ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to bless you and bless your family as you watch this video. I hope you are doing well in your place of domicile. I ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to make life comfortable for you and your family. Not many people know how best to use their time nowadays. There are those who are watching movies or going to sports or whatever is their pleasure. But you have spent time trying to listen to the word of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, your creator and sustainer, the one to whom you shall return. This video is beneficial, and I hope you will benefit from it. May Allah make it beneficial to you as you watch this video and as you share it with those who are your friends and well-wishers. My dear brothers and sisters in Islam, watching this video actually is an act of ibadah. It's an act of worship because you are making effort to understand what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has commanded upon you as his creature. Therefore, it's an act of worship and it's rewardable. I ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to make it rewardable to you, to give you the blessings of it in this world and the akhirah. In today's presentation, we are trying to speak about the issue of leadership, and especially looking at it from how bad leaders could bring, problem or failure or disaster to their people they are leading. In today's life, we find that leaders are going beyond bounds. They are creating problems for their, subjects, more or less. We have seen cases of oppression, cases of corruption, cases of arrogance. We have seen countries that were otherwise considered to be great being brought down by the carelessness of their leaders. We have seen countries that were struggling also being made worse in their conditions by the activities of their leaders. That is why it's important for us to speak about this issue. Many of us don't understand the consequences of taking the position of leadership. When a man goes out to marry, for example, he doesn't know he's assigning to himself the responsibility of a leader, for which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will hold him to account. The same thing with a woman who is going into marriage. She doesn't know that she is stepping into the position of leadership, for which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala shall question her on the day of accountability. What of those who hold positions of leadership in their places of work, or in the community, or in the nation? Those who are very obsessed with politics, for example. Yes, one thing is to seek position of leadership. The other is how well you discharge that responsibility. Because if you fail in the discharge of your responsibility as a leader, then of course, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will hold you to account. And if you succeed by bringing goodness to those whom you lead, of course, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will also reward you abundantly. So it's important for us, especially those who are seeking positions of responsibility, to realize that that is a duty. Not only do they owe it to mankind, they owe it to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will hold them to account. Very often when we speak about leadership, our mind goes to those who are at the top, the kings and the queens, the prime ministers and the presidents, the CEOs, and the commanders of the various armies, or the professors and heads of institution, or heads of organization. But do you know that it cuts across every level of human activity? That's why the Prophet sallallahu ta'ala alayhi wa sallam metaphorically reminds us that, each and every one of us was a leader in our sphere of influence. He declared, "Kullukum ra'in wa kullukum mas'ulun an ra'iyatihi." Each and every one of you is a shepherd watching over your flock. And you will be called to account for how you watch over your flock. Your flock in this case refer to people or objects that are under your sphere of responsibility as a leader. It could be your family members. As far as the family is concerned, the husband is the leader, while the wife and children are the flocks. The Prophet sallallahu ta'ala alayhi wa sallam, in the analysis of this hadith, says the wife is also a leader, watching over the children, watching over the property that belongs to the husband. Just as a slave is a leader, watching over the belonging of his master. My dear brothers and sisters in Islam, so it cuts across. It would be wrong for us to say, well, I'm not a leader. We're only talking about those who are in authority. No, you are a leader. Be very careful about how you deal with people who are under your control. This is the essence of this presentation. My dear brothers and sisters in Islam, what lessons can we learn in the leadership of those who led their people into destruction? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has permitted us to have leaders who will preside over our activities. But he did not hesitate to warn us about the consequences of having those leaders. He reminds us of the fact that one thing is to choose a leader, the other is to choose a right leader. Otherwise, you will indirectly be bringing destruction and punishment upon yourself through the leadership of your people. Therefore, we are warned to be very, very careful in the choice of our leaders, which means that we as followers have responsibility in making sure that we choose the best leaders to lead us. But how many of our followers nowadays consider the right reason for the choice of their leaders? That's why we have problems in the society. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, obey Allah and obey the messenger and obey those who have authority over you. But if you have cause to disagree with your leaders, then of course resort to the commandment of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. In other words, obedience to leader is not blind obedience. We are expected to differ if we have reason to differ from our leaders. And when we differ, we go back to the commandment of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. My dear brothers and sisters in Islam, even though I said that leadership cuts across the entire spectrum of human activity, today my focus is on those who are actually on the top. Are you not aware that leaders whom we have selected to lead us, in most cases, they lead us into difficulties. They create problems. They make life difficult instead of making the life easy. They do so through oppression. They do so through corruption. They do so through arrogance. They do so through, undue influence on the people. And they do so walking away thinking that there is no accountability. My dear brothers and sisters in Islam, if you are a leader, I want to warn you, just as I warned myself, of the fact that there is a consequence, especially those of you who are in the political arena. There is a consequence for your action. You will be held accountable for how you lead your people. Therefore, before you make a decision to become a leader, you need to consider how sincere you are. How well are you prepared to discharge the responsibility of a leader in a manner that will make you not only for people to like you or to be pleased with you, but for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the creator and sustainer, the one you are returning back to for accountability, for him to judge you right. My dear brothers and sisters in Islam, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has made it clear to us in the Quran that one of the reasons why nations will go into self-destruction, why he will allow nations to go into self-destruction or he will destroy the nation, is the fact that such nations are led by bad leaders and such nations permit their leaders to lead them into self-destruction. He gave us examples in the past, how nations were brought down by their leaders, and so Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala had to destroy them without sympathy. He talked about Qawmul Hud, Qawmul Salih, Qawmul Lut, Ashabul Aika, Qawmul Fir'aun, even Qawmul Nuh as well. All of them were brought down. Why? Because of the activities of those Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala described as Al-Mala'u Lazina Astakbaru Minhum, those who were leaders and celebrities of their time, who were arrogant, who allowed leadership to overtake them and began to mislead their people into destruction. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, Fasiru fil aradi fanzuru kayfa kana aqibatu lazina min qablihim. Tell your people, Ya Muhammad, let them travel on the land and ask questions. Let them study the history and see how those who came before them, how they were destroyed because of their intransigence, because of the bad leadership of the people. They resisted, they denied the revelations of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. They contradicted what they were told to do. And that's why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala destroyed them. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, وَمَا ظَلَمْنَاهُمْ وَلَكِنْ كَانُوا أَنفُسَهُمْ يَظْلِمُونَ. We did not wrong them. Of course, they wronged themselves. My dear brothers and sisters in Islam, this reminds us of the fact, therefore, that to be a leader is one thing, but to do well as a leader is another. To choose a leader is one thing, but to choose the right person is another. So let us be very careful in our choice of leadership. As I have stated, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, He will destroy nations based on the fact that they allow their leaders to mislead them. It is not He who is destroying them, it is the leaders that are actually leading their people into destruction. So when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala intends to destroy a nation, therefore, the first thing is He allowed them to choose the wrong leaders. And those wrong leaders will be leading them in the wrong direction. And once they are bound in that wrong direction, then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will have no choice but to exercise His authority of punishment over them by confirming over them those things which they have promised as the consequences of their action. In Surah Al-Isra, which is chapter 17 of the Holy Quran, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala declares, وَإِذَا أَرَدْنَا أَن نُهْلِكَ قَرْيَةً أَمَرْنَا مُتْرَ فِيهَا وَفَسَقُوا فِيهَا فَحَاقَ عَلَيْهَا الْقَوْلُ فَدَمَّرْنَاهَا تَدْمِيرًا. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, when we intend to destroy a nation, we allow that nation, the people of that nation, to select leaders that will lead them into self-destruction. In other words, Allah is warning you from the get-go that you, who is going to elect a leader or select a leader, has a responsibility to choose the right leader. Otherwise, He will permit your choice to prevail, and that your choice will lead to your self-destruction. You see, when we want to destroy a nation, we allow the people of that nation to choose the wrong leaders. And when they choose the wrong leaders, those leaders will actually engage in wrongfulness, leading them to the wrong direction until we are satisfied that they had now gone beyond limit. We shall confirm the word against them. The word of punishment will be confirmed against them, and we shall destroy them. My dear brothers and sisters in Islam, this is a very serious warning from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to not only the leader, but those who are being led, those who are responsible for choosing those leaders. So let us be very careful. If you consider this carefully, you will see that the problems we have today in the life we live is because we choose the wrong leaders into position. We resort to ethnicism, to the influence of money, to other considerations, instead of looking for the right person based on the deeds and character and the fear of God of that person. No, we throw the right reasons to the winds, and we are choosing the leaders based on wrong reasons. It doesn't take time for such leaders to show us their right color, through corruption, through oppression, through stigmatization, through whatever means, to make sure that they lead you to self-destruction. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to protect us against our leaders. My dear brothers and sisters, Islam, that's why the Prophet sallallahu ta'ala alayhi wa sallam warned us seriously against choosing the wrong leaders. As I said, once the leadership is chosen, then it's up to you to wait for the consequence of your action. If you are lucky and it's a good leader, alhamdulillah. If you turn out to be a bad leader, then of course, you also have a share in the blame. But I want to remind you and remind myself today, especially those who are chosen as leaders. As I said at the beginning, if you knew the consequences that await you because of your leadership, you will not strive to even go into politics to lead people. Because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has made it clear that not only will he hold you accountable for your own action, he will hold you accountable for the actions of those whom you have led. If you lead them well and they follow the right way, he will bless you. But if you lead them wrongly, bring oppression against them, or bring suffering upon them, or lead them to do what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala asks them not to do, then of course, you as a leader will share in their blame. You will be held accountable. In Surah An-Nahl, which is chapter 16 of the Holy Quran, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, لِيَحْمِلُوا أَوْزَارَهُمْ كَامِلَةً يَوْمَ الْقِيَامَةِ وَمِنْ أَوْزَارِ الَّذِينَ يُضِلُّونَهُم بِغَيْرِ عِلْمٍ أَلَا سَاءَ مَا يَزِرُونَ. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, on the day of Qiyamah, we shall give them a burden, a heavy load to carry on their shoulders for their own action, their own individual action. And we shall also give them additional burden to carry on their shoulder as a result of the bad ways they misled people, as a result of the bad way they led their people. Whatever their people did, therefore, which was also wrong, the leaders will be held accountable for them. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, Allah sa'a ma yazirun. What a bad situation will somebody like that find himself. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala not to allow us to experience that. That's a warning for those of you who occupy a position of leadership in today's world. You think that you can go away freely after misleading the people. No, you may be free from men, but you are not free from God. You will be held accountable for it. So be very careful. We have seen nations after nations of the past, as I said, that were destroyed by Allah because of the leadership. We have seen the example of Pharaoh, who was destroyed because of the way he managed his people, because of his intransigence towards the commandment of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Individuals like that. Are you not aware of empires that have passed? Nations can be brought down as a result of the activities of their leaders. We used to hear of the Roman Empire. We used to hear of the Persian Empire. We used to hear of the, Ottoman Empire. And if you go down to Africa, we used to hear of the empires of Mali, the empires of Ghana, the empires of Benin, the empires of Oyo. Where are they nowadays? They have gone into oblivion because they allowed their leaders to mislead them. These nations are nations that rose to the peak of power, and through corruption and arrogance, through abuse of people, through oppression, they allowed their kingdom to fall into pieces. Today they are history. Why are they history? So that those of us who are living will learn lessons from their own activities. But are we ready to learn such lessons? In our recent past, we have seen how, people like Adolf Hitler, out of carelessness, brought the First World War and Second World War into the entire mankind. Imagine the destruction that followed that. We have seen how bad leaders of today also have brought destruction upon their people through their carelessness, through their mismanagement of resources. We have even seen nowadays that the nations that are supposed to show example in terms of choice of leadership are being reduced to, mere ridicule as a result of the activities of their leaders. They stay in power, they become, semi-gods. They think they are above the law. The rule of law that is supposed to apply to everybody on equal basis. They choose certain laws for themselves and assign others to the entire public. That cannot go too far. It will not take long before Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will allow such nations to wither away. And dear brothers in Islam, let us be very careful, therefore, whenever we are called upon to choose leaders. And let us be very careful when we see leaders are going the wrong way. You are not supposed to close your mouth. You are supposed to speak out. You are allowed to differ with your leader. You are allowed to question your leader. You are allowed to change your leader if that leader is not good. That's why the Prophet sallallahu ta'ala alayhi wa sallam, in the hadith narrated by Anas bin Malik radiallahu anhu, the Prophet sallallahu ta'ala alayhi wa sallam says, Unsuru akhaka dhulma aw mazluma. Help your brother who is being oppressed, and help your brother who is oppressing the oppressed. The Sahaba asked the Prophet, we can understand, if we are to help the one who is being oppressed against the oppressor, how can we help the oppressor as well? The Prophet sallallahu ta'ala alayhi wa sallam said, you can help the oppressor by preventing him from carrying out his oppression. In other words, followers are permitted to resist the oppression of their leaders, to help their leaders get away from oppression, because if they don't do that, they will mislead the nation into destruction and they will be held to punishment on the day of accountability. My dear brothers and sisters in Islam, let us play our role as individuals and as followers and as leaders so that the society will be better for all of us. All the trouble we are going through into this life would not exist if those who are assigned to positions of authority truly carry out what they are asked to do. My dear brothers and sisters in Islam, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is very kind. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is ready to help a nation that is able to help itself. But when a nation allows itself to drift into oblivion, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, Inna Allah la yughayyiru ma bi qawmin hatta yughayyiru ma bi anfusihim. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will not change the condition of a nation until the people of that nation change the things that led them into that condition. In other words, you are the architect of your own misfortune in that instance. And Allah will not remove that misfortune away from you unless you change your character, unless you change your ways. So we call on our leaders, therefore, to be very mindful of the fact that, leadership can make or unmake a country. There are good examples of people who have led in the past that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala have, extolled in the Quran. Leaders like Prophet Dawood alayhi salam, Sulaiman alayhi salam, these were great leaders. Even when they made mistake, they, sought the forgiveness of Allah. But then they did their best. What about a leader like Muhammad sallallahu ta'ala alayhi wa sallam? Afdalul khalqi wa akramur rusul. There was no example like him. He led well with sympathy, with concern. He led well with true guidance. He led well, putting himself in the position of those under his authority. That's the example we are supposed to follow. We are not supposed to follow the example of those who bring destruction upon their people. So we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to guide our leaders to the straight path, take shaitan away from our lives and take our lives far away from the shaitan. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala as well to guide us as followers of our leaders, so that whenever the time comes to make the choice of leadership, we will be able to make the right choice. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to make this life comfortable for us and make the hereafter better. ربنا تقبل منا إنك أنت السميع العليم وتب علينا يا مولانا إنك أنت الغفور الكريم. اللهم ابسط علينا من بركاتك ورحمتك وفضلك ورزقك وكرمك يا أكرم الأكرمين ويا أرحم الراحمين. ربنا آتنا في الدنيا حسن وفي الآخرة حسن وقنا عذاب النار. سبحان ربك رب العزة عما يصفون والسلام على المرسلين والحمد لله رب العالمين. سبحان الله وبحمده سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك نشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت نستغفرك ونتوب إليك. الحمد لله.